Hello friends! Have you ever wondered what the best way to set up your greenhouse is? Well, maybe not. It seems like almost everyone agrees that the best final setup for the greenhouse should be a bunch of ancient fruit or star fruit in the tillable area at the center with fruit trees around the perimeter. But is that always the best way? Well, let's see what the scientists have to say. If you find this video interesting, please like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and let me know if there are any other topics that you'd like to see as well. With that being said, let's get into it. I started a new Stardew Valley playthrough on the Riverland farm. The goal was to force a little variety into my playthrough. I wanted to steer myself away from the typical path towards ancient fruit wine filling up sheds, cellars, or anywhere else that I could pack it in. To do this, I set up some ground rules. No selling ancient fruit or its products. No selling pineapple or its products except when required for quests. I'm looking at you, island ingredients. The artisan profession is not allowed, and I'm only allowed to craft one of each preserves jars, kegs, and dehydrators, so I can't depend on any high volume processing of crops, and most crops will probably have to be sold raw. With this in mind, what can we do to change up the greenhouse? Well, we've got a couple of ideas, and maybe they'll even be useful in playthroughs without these limitations. First off, I wanted to see how well fruit trees do in the greenhouse compared to other crops. To get a baseline, let's compare a readily available fruit tree, the peach, to something like ancient fruit. The only crop more profitable than ancient fruit wine on the basis of gold per day per plant is star fruit wine with the hyper speed grow. Or is it? An ancient fruit can be harvested every 7 days. The base fruit price is 550 gold, which translates to about 79 gold per day. As wine, the sell price is 1,650 gold or 235 gold per day per plant over the long run, assuming that you have the kegs to support it. If you've got the artisan profession, this will jump up to 2,310 gold for wine and 330 gold per day. But for now, we're just gonna stick to the base prices since our fruit trees would also scale up after processing as well. So how does a peach tree fare? In the greenhouse, a peach tree will produce 1 peach per day. At a base price of 140 gold, that jumps to 420 gold per day as wine, assuming that you have 7 kegs that you are willing to commit to each peach tree. Okay, so that's a lot of kegs, but it's clearly winning on a per crop basis. If you replace the kegs with dehydrators, you'll still be making 215 gold per day per peach tree, which is in the same ballpark as ancient fruit wine, and you'll have processing capacity to spare. This all looks pretty promising for fruit trees, and it gets even better when you take processing out of the equation. So when we implement our restrictions, assuming no fertilizers are used, blueberries are probably your best bet at about 40 gold per day per plant if you sell just the berries, assuming that you have reached level 10 farming. Since we didn't put any limits on seed makers, you could actually make a little bit more on the blueberries by making seeds and selling those, but it still looks pretty paltry compared to the 140 gold per day from just selling peaches. Okay, fruit trees look really good in this case, so let's see if we can find a good way to set them up. There's only so many that you can cram into the greenhouse, and at 6,000 gold each for saplings, it won't be cheap to set this up in your first year. The permanent decorations around the outside of the greenhouse block planting fruit trees in those particular spaces, and you can't plant them on the border around the tillable area either. Technically, you can get 32 trees using this pattern. If you reduce it down to 30 trees, you can get a little bit more of a symmetrical pattern and save yourself 2 additional tillable spaces for other crops. This pattern also opens up a path in the middle of the greenhouse, which leaves 20 spaces open for crop growth while your fruit trees are growing, as well as granting easier access to garden pots around the edge of the greenhouse if you go that route. Be prepared for some waiting though. It'll take 28 days for the fruit trees to mature. This is on par with ancient fruit growth time, but unlike ancient fruit, you won't be able to plant anything within a 1 tile range around each tree or they won't grow. So that means that a lot of your greenhouse will sit idle during this time. Once they're mature, you can plant crops or put anything else around the trees. But in the meantime, this leaves you with only a 20-tile strip in the center of the greenhouse to plant. Depending on which season you get the greenhouse, this may or may not be a big deal. It could be tough to watch a greenhouse sit the entire winter with almost nothing planted. If you can make it through these growing pains, it may be eventually worth it. Just a couple of other notes. I mentioned blueberries, but I'm actually going with a mix of cactus and grapes in my non-artisan playthrough. Grapes and cactus both aren't too far behind blueberries for profits, and they actually way outperform them in terms of farming experience. What really makes the difference for me is the 3-day regrowth period for both of them. This aligns perfectly with the harvesting time of fruit trees, so you can really optimize your trips to the greenhouse, harvesting everything just once every 3 days. You can even use fruit trees or a preserve jar outside of the greenhouse to help keep track of when everything inside is ready to harvest. Since multi-harvest crop regrowth times aren't affected by speed growth, this means that we can use the fertilizer slot for something like Deluxe retaining soil, which lets us fill up even more space with crops in garden pots. Starfruit is an honorable mention here as well if you use Deluxe Speed Grow to bring the growth time down to 9 days, which would also align well with every 3rd tree harvest. The other note is the fruit trees will also improve their quality each year, so by the 4th year you'll be getting 100% iridium quality, and your peach tree will be making a baseline of 280 gold per day just by selling the raw fruit. Without the artisan profession, the only crop that can beat that out on a per crop basis is pale ale from hops. If you don't have access to processing equipment, nothing else comes close. I don't think I've ever seen anyone plant common trees inside the greenhouse, so I kinda didn't think that this next one would even work. I tested out some common tree seeds in the greenhouse, and it turns out that they will grow in the tillable soil at the center, just not around the edges. With this in mind, maybe some of you are gonna see where I'm going with this. If you can plant wild trees indoors, that means that we've got a way of getting mushroom logs to get their tree proximity bonuses to work indoors. Check out my other videos on mushroom logs if you want to learn more about them, but let's just say that they are really good for making money. While it's true mushroom logs can go in a lot of places, notably outdoors all year round, hey, if you're a mushroom farmer, you'll put them anywhere you can, and for good reason. In the greenhouse, you can set up mushroom logs pretty efficiently. Check out this setup, which puts mushroom logs in range of roughly 6.5 trees on average. If you're using mystic trees, this translates to about 360 gold per day per log after you process the mushrooms in the dehydrator. Each log will beat out an ancient fruit plant that is processing into wine. It'll drop a lot if you're going without artisan or any processing at all, but the fruit wine alternatives will drop even more, so mushrooms will easily beat out the profits on raw crops. The tapped mystic trees will yield about 143 gold per day with normal tappers and 333 gold per day with the heavy tappers, regardless of the artisan profession. On top of that, any empty walkway spaces can be used for crops, so you're not really wasting any space as long as you stay away from trellis crops. You probably won't be getting any mystic trees until mid-playthrough, but if you don't have them, pine tree seeds are super easy to get and will only lose about 30% of your mushroom revenue from mystic trees. At this point, mushroom logs seem to be one of the best moneymakers in so many situations. For my non-artisan run, using mushroom logs feels a little like cheating almost as much as the artisan profession. In hindsight, limiting mushroom logs should have been on the list, but either way, I'm not gonna go this route for anything more than demonstration purposes. At least, maybe you can see that they're on par with the best crops, even in the greenhouse. Before we wrap things up, here's a quick comparison of the traditional greenhouse setup versus the 2 options that I showed using ancient fruit with deluxe retaining soil for all open tillable tiles. I think that the main takeaway is you can potentially beat ancient fruit on a per tile basis with other options, even in the greenhouse. This could be accentuated even more if you're limited by artisan crafting equipment, notably in this case because of a specific challenge that was implemented. In the end, it kind of depends on the goals and restrictions that you set for yourself. At the very least, it looks like you have some options other than just the typical endgame winemaking. It can be really fun to try to optimize, but optimizing the fun out of games is possible too. I can understand trying to make enough for your golden clock, but I've really liked setting up limitations that have changed how I play. There's nothing wrong with being a corn farmer or raising just dinosaurs on your farm if you enjoy it. Chasing gold all the time can sometimes kill the fun, so maybe that really isn't the best way to play in the long run. As always, I want to know what you guys think. Do you ever get sick of the same old endgame setups, and are you willing to try to change it up? I'd love to hear in the comments if I missed anything about either of these options, or if you have other cool ideas for the greenhouse. Heck, if there are any challenges that make the game less cookie cutter in the end, I would love to hear them too. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything new, please give it a like and subscribe, or come say hello to me on Twitch. Until next time, goodbye.